needs, not simply based on pure luck. Our immigration system is in need of more reform than this, but this is a great reform, and I urge my colleagues to pass this legislation.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Michigan.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased now to yield to the former chairman of the Education and Labor Committee, the distinguished gentleman from California, George Miller, 2 minutes.
Gentleman from California.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Speaker, I rise in opposition to this partisan bill. It's unfortunate. Maintaining this country's advantage in science and technology is an important issue, and it should not be a partisan issue. Democrats have long supported efforts to increase STEM careers in this country and to address the question of STEM visas. We all recognize how important these careers are to the future economic strength of this country. We could be working together in a bipartisan way to address these issues in a fair and thoughtful manner. But this bill does not do that. Instead of working together, the majority has chosen a partisan route. This route puts American workers' wages at risk at a time when they can ill afford it. It allows dangerous race to the bottom that will drive wages down for American workers. It allows employers to pay visa holders less than the actual wages paid for similarly situated workers at that employer. A U.S. worker and a visa holder could be working right next to one another and doing the same work, and the foreign worker is cheaper. We know that this will mean that U.S. workers pay and what this will mean for U.S. workers' pay and job opportunities. Depressing family wages is not what our country needs. That's why I joined with Congresswoman Lofgren on legislation that would require a visa holder to be paid at least the actual wage being paid by the U.S. worker with similar experience. I also have deep concerns that this partisan bill is also a payoff to predatory for-profit educational institutions. The Republican bill includes language that specifically allows for-profit institutions to participate in this program. Why is that? Tech and other high-skilled employers have not been pushing to get more foreign graduates from for-profit schools. The provision would allow these institutions to find new, potentially lucrative revenue streams for their shareholders without regard to the actual needs of the American labor market. Mr. Speaker, the American people have made it clear that they are fed up with the powerful special interests gaming the system to increase their bottom line. They are fed up with the partisan exercise meant to gain political advantage during an election cycle. It is no surprise that for 2 years this Congress had an opportunity to have a full and open debate on this very important issue. But the Republicans have chosen partisanship, obstruction, and polarization over moving this country forward, and that's why we see this bill at the last minute, and that's why we see this bill requiring two-thirds vote.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, under this bill, employers have to pay the prevailing wage. I don't know where the gentleman got his information. Mr. Speaker, I'll yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Griffin, a distinguished and active member of the Judiciary Committee.
Gentleman from Arkansas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of the STEMS Job Act, and I thank Chairman Smith for his leadership. I want to tell you about some job creators in my district that would benefit from this bill. Wellspun Tubular, which made the pipe for the Keystone Pipeline, needs advanced STEM graduates to train workers. Power Technology needs highly skilled workers to design, develop, and manufacture laser products. These companies have struggled to find the specific talent they need, and this bill would help them create jobs. We are currently educating highly skilled PhDs and masters and sending them back home to compete against us after they graduate. That's like Arkansas recruiting the best college football players from Texas, training them on our offense, and sending them back to Texas to compete against us. That doesn't make any sense. Let's fix it. Let's pass this bill.
His time has expired. Gentleman from Michigan.
Mr. Speaker, few have worked harder on this with Zoe Lofgren than the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Gutierrez, to whom I yield 2 minutes.
Gentleman from Illinois.
Thank you so much. It might appear like we're having a debate about whether we should send STEM graduates, those with advanced degrees in science, technology, engineering, and math, to faraway lands to work for companies to compete against us. But this debate is not about that, because the need for STEM visas, there is no debate. The real debate we're having today in creating STEM visas is whether to shut the door to opportunities to others who contribute to the United States of America. I haven't seen one letter from Google, Yahoo, Apple, Intel, or the high-tech industry that says eliminate 25,000 to 30,000 visas to those from Africa and give them to the to the high-tech industry. I haven't seen one letter that says that, and they know that it's just something that they want to do, and they want to poison this well with that kind of, what I think, bad policy. Based on the immigrant stories we heard at the Republican and Democratic conventions from almost every speaker, I would guess all of us here would welcome you as any decent, hardworking person with enough heart and guts to pursue their biggest dream. But that's not what this bill does. I wish it did. Imagine if those millions who passed through Ellis Island were given a test when they arrived. If they were gifted in science and math, they were in. If they were simply a hardworking man or woman in search of a better life, prepared to sweat and toil in the fields or in our factories, they wouldn't have been good enough under this bill. Think about it. Where would we all be if we had to pass that test? The Pelosi's and the Palazos, the Boehners and the Blumenauers, the Schakowskis and the Lipinskis, the Kennedys and the Kuciniches, the Romneys and yes, the Rubios. When my parents came from Puerto Rico, they didn't need a visa, but they just had a 6th grade education and a 9th grade education. Under this bill, they would say, not here and not in this America, you're not welcome. But my mom worked in a factory, and my dad drove a cab, and they worked hard every day. They worked hard every day to make this, and they sent their children to college, and one of them today serves in the Congress of the United States. They lived the story of America.
30 more seconds.
Gentleman's recognized.
They lived the story of America. They came with nothing but hopes and played by the rules and achieved great things, not necessarily for themselves, but for their children, and now their grandchildren. Has America benefited? Could we attract the smartest and the brightest? Yes. But America is also a nation because we attract those with the most heart and soul to make something different. Let's defeat that bill so we can continue that great American tradition.
Time's expired. Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, on the way to yielding to the gentleman from Idaho, I recognize myself for 30 seconds.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, no one is hurt more by the diversity visa program than unemployed Hispanics and black Americans. The unemployment rate for Hispanics with only a high school education is almost 14%. The unemployment rate for African Americans with only a high school education is almost 19%. The diversity visa program forces these unemployed Americans to compete with those other individuals who don't have more than a high school education for very scarce American jobs. Why do we want to do this to our own people? I'll recognize for 2 minutes the gentleman from Idaho, Mr. Labrador, an original co-sponsor of this legislation, very active on the subject.
Gentleman from Idaho.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of the STEM Jobs Act of 2012. This bill addresses one of the bipartisan issues we ought to be able to solve here in the House of Representatives. Both President Obama and Governor Romney have spoken about the need to reform our immigration system to keep more of the best and the brightest minds in America. I'm very pleased to have worked with Chairman Smith on this bill, and I want to thank him for his leadership on this bill. I also want to thank Mr. Goodlatte and the Majority Leader for their commitment to bring this jobs bill to the floor. The future of our economy is in STEM fields. New printers from Hewlett-Packard, new semiconductors from Micron, and new phones from Apple are all rely on retaining the world's best and brightest students and harnessing their ingenuity to create jobs here in America. Even in an economic downturn, there aren't enough U.S.-born graduates to meet the needs of high-tech employers. Right now, foreign-born students are benefiting from our education system and then going home to compete with us. This legislation allows us to retain their skills and innovation. We know that every American with an advanced STEM degree creates 2 to 3 new American jobs. We are replacing a broken, inefficient visa program with one that works, rewards innovation, and means jobs for our economy. Mr. Speaker, I've heard the other side talk about this bill today all day. This other side controlled the House, the Senate, and the presidency for 2 years and did nothing to improve the immigration system. They didn't pass immigration bills, yet the president campaigns on the issue of immigration reform. Yet once again, faced with actually passing a bill that improves the immigration system, they're making a stand against immigration reform and against economic growth. Let me clarify one thing. I have a great deal of respect for Congressman Lofgren. She and I have talked about this issue for the entire year and a half, 2 years that I've been here in Congress. And I recognize that she's been a leader on this issue for over the years. But I'm also an immigration attorney. I've been an immigration attorney for 15 years. And I must clarify that unused diversity visas have never rolled over, and to oppose this bill on those grounds is just proof that this is more about politics than policy. Thank
Gentleman
you.
yield.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Michigan.
Mr. Speaker, the previous speaker, and I'd like to gain his attention, the House of which you are a member passed the DREAM Act 216 to 208, and we enjoyed the support of 8 Republican members. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to a senior member of the Committee of the Judiciary, Sheila Jackson Lee, and I am only able to yield to her 1 1/2 minutes.
And lady from Texas, 90 seconds.
Mr. Chairman, I'm most grateful. Let me thank you very much to the Speaker and to my colleague from Texas. This is the perfect infrastructure for collaboration and bipartisanship. We have worked together on this issue, and we have confronted the issue that I mentioned to Congresswoman Loughran, and which we will continue to work on, is to ensure the outreach to historically black colleges and Hispanic-serving colleges for the engineers and scientists who are prepared to work in America's technology industry, and I expect that that will happen. And so I am supportive of STEM visas to provide for the infrastructure of workers for the dynamic technology, Silicon Valley, software, Austin, Texas, and beyond, to be able to be vibrant and thriving. But as I just left the president of Malawi, a woman who has inspired Malawans to look to the future, and as they look to the future, we have said that we want to ensure that America has a future with the continent. To remove the diversity visas that creates diversity, to take away the opportunities from a continent that by and large has been an ally and friend to the United States, whose African citizens have come to be reunited with families, who have generated outstanding businesses, from South Africans to Kenyans to Ghanaians to those from Cote d'Ivoire and those from Nigeria, where in my town, Nigerians have created the most successful brand of small businesses, from being seamstresses to doctors and lawyers and others. I cannot vote for a bill that will allow us to remove the component for diversity visas as an exchange or substitute for this kind of approach. We must have a balanced, comprehensive immigration reform. I yield back.
Expired. The gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, let's put our own unemployed Hispanics and black Americans first. They should come first. Mr. Speaker, I yield 45 seconds to the gentleman from California, Mr. Bill Bray, who is the chairman of the Immigration Reform Caucus.
Gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, I rise today in strong support of this piece of legislation. And all over America, Americans are having to make priority decisions in their families. The fact is, this Congress needs to make some priority decisions. It is not only the right but the responsibility of this Congress and this nation to make sure that our immigration policy is good for America first and foremost. This bill will replace a failed system that actually gambled with America's future by having a lottery, and replaces it with bringing good scientists in. And let me just give you the numbers from just recently. This is going to create 55,000. We'll be able to see that, do we want to have 6,000 Iranians coming here, or do we want 6,000 scientists and researchers coming in? Do we want to set aside an area where we have over 2,000 Moroccans being given a set-aside for their country, rather than treating individuals that have proven that they have an asset that we need in this country? The real issue here, Mr. Chairman, are we willing to correct the mistake of the past to move forward with a fair system that judges individuals based on their merit, not based on the country that they are coming from? And I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Michigan.
Mr. Speaker, I yield the gentlelady, Ms. Sheila Jackson Lee, 25 seconds.
Gentlelady's recognized.
If we pass the American Jobs Act, we will help Hispanic youngsters, Anglo youngsters, African American youngsters, and all Americans. However, what an insult to America's values to suggest that those who come to this country to give by way of a legal process, diversity visas, are not contributing. I do not want to insult anyone who comes with the idea of helping America. That means wherever they've come from, Africa, Iran, and elsewhere. If they come for a good reason through the diversity visa to reunite with their family, that is the American way. Immigration by law, that is the American way.
Mr. Speaker.
I yield back. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield to the very patient member from Texas, Mr. Hinojosa, 1 1/2 minutes.
Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to strongly oppose H.R. 6429, the Republican STEM proposal before the House today under suspension of the rules. As the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Higher Education and Workforce and Vice Chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, I urge my colleagues to join me and members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus, and the Asian American Caucus in strongly opposing this Republican STEM proposal, misguided legislation that would curtail legal immigration to the United States. As a proud co-sponsor of this bill, I support this legislation because it would allow advanced STEM graduates to remain in the United States and contribute to our nation's scientific discovery and technological innovation, increasing our nation's global competitiveness. This bill reduces backlogs for STEM degree recipients by attracting and retaining critical talent and creating a new EB Green Card category for persons with advanced degrees in STEM from research universities in the United States. I must underscore that this bill does not eliminate or weaken our immigration programs to increase STEM visas. This bill targets only the best and the brightest foreign students. Unlike the Republican proposal, this legislation, H.R. 6412, does not allow foreign graduates of for-profit colleges or receive STEM visas, including degrees earned by mail or over the Internet. In closing, I urge my colleagues to strengthen our nation's global competitiveness, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The chair would advise both sides that the gentleman from Texas still has 4 1/4 minutes, and the gentleman from Michigan has 30 seconds. Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 45 seconds to the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Flake, who has long been active on the subject of immigration.
Gentleman from Arizona.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of the STEM Jobs Act. For the past 3 Congresses, I've worked on this issue with the introduction of the Staple Act, which would do much the same that this bill does, as well as support for other pieces of legislation that do what this piece of legislation does, which is allow those who are trained in our universities here to contribute to the U.S. economy. We all know that it's not government that creates jobs. The job of government is to enable the private sector to create jobs. I can think of no better way than to allow the private sector access to the brain power, to those with the knowledge, that those who have been trained in our universities to stay here and help create jobs. This is a good piece of legislation. It's one of the few pieces of immigration legislation that has bipartisan support. I urge its adoption and yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Does the gentleman from Michigan wish to reserve his 30 seconds to close? Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. Royce, who is also chairman of the Foreign Affairs Terrorism Subcommittee.
Gentleman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support the STEM Jobs Act. And it is time to alter the current immigration system. It is time to substantially increase the proportion of new entrants with high levels of education and skills. Today, we are educating many of the best and brightest from around the world, and then, ironically, we're sending them back to work for our competitors. And this makes no sense. Skilled immigrants can contribute to a rising U.S. standard of living. They bring capital, they bring ideas, and they produce new companies. And with this bill, we can help grow innovation, we can create jobs in the U.S. We've got plenty of examples of IT firms in California that are founded by immigrants from China and India that were educated in our institutions. Let's pass this bill and help our economy grow, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I'll yield 45 seconds to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Altmaier, who is a member of the Education and Workforce Committee.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Mr. Speaker, while I would have preferred the Lofgren approach, I rise in support of the STEM Jobs Act because it's critical to keeping America competitive in the global economy. The United States has the best institutions of higher education in the world, particularly when it comes to the STEM fields. Yet U.S. businesses frequently express concerns over the availability of qualified workers to perform jobs that are available and need to be filled once we educate and train these students for jobs. We send them back to their home countries to compete against us. This simply makes no sense. And by passing this bill, we will help ensure that the best and brightest in the world aren't working for our competitors abroad, but that America keeps that talent here at home and they play on our team instead of competing against us. I yield back my time.
The gentleman from Texas has 1 3/4 minutes remaining.
Mr. Speaker, I will yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. Lundgren, who is the chairman of the House Administration Committee and a senior member of the Judiciary Committee.
Gentleman from California.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, let's remember where we are. Up until 1965, we had a quota system that essentially gave advantages to certain countries to get their people in here versus others. We removed that in 1965. We went to a worldwide quota system based on the fact that everyone around the world would have an equal chance to get to the United States based on their talents and their reason for coming here. But in about 1981, there was a cry that we weren't getting enough Irish coming in here. And so Tip O'Neill, I recall I was here on the floor at that time, Tip O'Neill and Teddy Kennedy worked together to create the diversity program that allowed anybody to apply for it at 12:01 a.m. one morning, and what do you know, only the Irish knew about it, and we got essentially Irish in. That worked for a while. Then we changed it so that they and others were no longer allowed, and we only allowed certain countries in. So we're going back to a quota system by country. It doesn't make sense. It ought to be a worldwide quota system. In addition, I would just say that most African American immigrants to the U.S. do not come through the diversity program. We have many that are engaged in STEM program study here. Just 3,000 from Nigeria alone would be able to participate in this.
So we're at 30 seconds and 45 seconds. Gentleman from Michigan.
Mr. Speaker, I yield the balance of our time on our side to the distinguished gentlelady from California, Zoe Lofgren.
Gentlelady from California.
Mr. Speaker, I think this is a disappointing day at a time when we look for leadership on the part of the majority to bring us together. Instead, we have a partisan bill before us. We have 54 co-sponsors on the bill that we've introduced. The remarkable thing is that we have support across the entire breadth of the Democratic caucus for STEM visas. The things that have been said about the diversity visa today are simply wrong. They remind me of the warnings we got a short while ago about the terror babies who would somehow emerge after 21 years. It's absurd. We need to vote against this bill, but I think we can quickly reconvene and get to the bipartisan effort that this country deserves. And I yield back.
All time has expired. The gentleman from Texas has 45 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time.
The gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, the STEM Jobs Act boosts economic growth and spurs job creation by enabling American employers to hire some of the best and brightest foreign students who graduate from American universities. The American public, American employers, and the high-tech community all support this bipartisan piece of legislation. I urge my colleagues to vote for jobs, vote for innovation, and vote for economic growth. Let's put the interest of America first.
Gentleman yields back his time. All time has expired. Question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 6429? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, 2/3 of those being in the affirmative. Gentleman from Michigan.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this motion will be postponed. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, proceedings will now resume on questions previously postponed. Votes will be taken in the following order. Passage of House Joint Resolution 118, the motion to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 6429, and the motion to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 5987. The first electronic vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote. Remaining electronic votes will be conducted as a 5-minute vote. The unfinished business is the vote on passage of House Joint Resolution 118, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will report the title of the joint resolution.
Union Calendar Number 489, House Joint Resolution 118, Joint Resolution providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title 5 United States Code of the rules submitted by the Office of Family Assistance of the Administration for Children and Families of the Department of Health and Human Services relating to waiver and expenditure authority under Section 1115 of the Social Security Act 42 U.S.C. 1315 with respect to the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families Program.
Question is on the passage of the joint resolution. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote followed by 2 5-minute votes.
This is a vote on final passage of a disapproval resolution aimed at blocking the Obama administration's recent changes to the welfare law. House Republicans say the administration is undermining the intent of the 1996 law by deciding to grant waivers from the law's work requirements to states that come up with pilot programs designed to put people back to work. Here's more about the resolution.
David Harrison is staff writer for Congressional Quarterly. What exactly are House Republicans trying to achieve by introducing this disapproval resolution?
Well, the House Republicans are very upset about a rule that Secretary Sebelius, Secretary of Health and Human Services, rolled out in July, which would waive the work requirements for welfare, for the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program, in states that put forward a pilot programs to get more people back to work. The Republicans are very upset about this. They say it guts the 1996 Welfare Reform Act, and they're trying to undo it with this resolution.
What was the impetus for pursuing this legislation?
You mean the resolution here today?
Yeah.
It was that under the Congressional Review Act of 1996, the Congress can weigh in on administration rules, and in this case, both the House and the Senate have introduced these resolutions to basically try to block the rule. So if the resolution that's voted on today, if it's also approved in the Senate, and if President Obama signs it, then the rule will be blocked.
How are Democrats expected to vote on this?
Democrats will pretty much every single Democrat is going to vote against this. Democrats are they complain that the Republican opposition is nothing more than a political stunt designed to give Mitt Romney fodder for campaign commercials. So you'll probably hear some very impassioned speeches from Democrats on this.
Can you lay out the work requirements under the 1996 welfare law, and what are the changes the administration's making?
Yeah, no, this gets a little technical, but basically, overall, the Welfare Requirement Act, the welfare law of 1996 requires that all able-bodied adults who receive benefits, 50% of them must be engaged in some sort of work. Now, there are exceptions. States can do various things to various loopholes they can use. So in reality, only about 30% of recipients are engaged in work activities. What this would do would essentially say that the states complain that they spend an enormous amount of time tracking down these people, filing paperwork, doing all these bureaucratic tasks that take away from their ability to put people back to work. So what they want to do is they want to waiver from this 50% work requirement, so they can put in place their own programs that will ultimately put more people back to work. That's the idea.
Can you name some of the states that are pursuing these waivers?
Yeah, so so far no one's actually applied for them. We're still very early in the process, but the states that have asked the Secretary for this specifically and are Utah, Nevada, I believe California, Minnesota, and Connecticut have also expressed interest. What's interesting about this, and this is a point that Democrats make repeatedly, is that both Utah and Nevada have Republican governors who have asked for this.
Well, the welfare law is set to expire at the end of September. What might happen if it's not renewed in time?
Yes, it expires in September. Well, if it's not renewed, the whole program goes away, but that's not going to happen. House and Senate negotiators added a 6-month extension to the welfare law to TANF. In the spending bill, the 6-month stopgap spending bill that their House approved last week, I believe, and the Senate is debating this week. So assuming that gets through, and I think everybody assumes that eventually it will, the welfare program will continue for another 6 months. But you're right, we do need, there hasn't been a full-on reauthorization for, I think, a couple of years now, and so that's something that Congress is going to have to address eventually.
David Harrison is Congressional Quarterly staff writer. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks very much.
HHS Secretary Kathleen Zabilia said her department would not grant a work requirement waiver unless the state can prove that its pilot program would increase the number of people moving from welfare to work by 20%. This is a vote on final passage of the disapproval resolution. Some of our live coverage this evening, a Senate Subcommittee on Investigations is holding a hearing on multinational corporations shifting profits into offshore subsidiaries to avoid paying U.S. taxes. You can see that live right now on C-SPAN 3. And we'll also have the Massachusetts Senate debate this evening. Senator Scott Brown and Elizabeth Warren at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, live on C-SPAN 3, C-SPAN Radio, and cspan.org. As the House continues to vote, an update on a couple of stories. Former Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty is resigning as the national co-chairman of Republican Mitt Romney's presidential campaign in order to lobby for the financial services industry. The Financial Services Roundtable announced today that Tim Pawlenty will become its new president and chief executive officer on November 1st. Also, the Senate today voted to formally begin debate on a bill passed by the House last week on temporary spending for the federal government through March of next year. The resolution increases spending by slightly over 0.5% during that time. But final passage of the measure in the Senate is stalled while senators negotiate over some foreign policy legislation. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid came to the floor a short while ago saying that there will be no more votes tonight and that there's no agreement yet and no movement on the spending resolution. As this vote wraps up here in the House, the Justice Department's Inspector General Michael Horowitz testified today before the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee about his agency's report that was released yesterday with details of an ATF operation called Fast and Furious. That 471-page report comes after an 18-month investigation. Associated Press writes that House Republicans eagerly joined the Justice Department's Inspector General in taking the agency to task for its bungled gun trafficking probe in Arizona that allowed hundreds of weapons to reach Mexican drug rings. We'll have that for you after the House is out here on C-SPAN at 8 o'clock Eastern Time in prime time. And also up next here in the House, a vote on a bill dealing with visas for high-tech jobs.
In this vote, the yeas are 250, the nays are 164. The joint resolution is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion from the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Smith, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 6429, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. Clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 6429, a bill to amend the Immigration and Nationality Act to promote innovation, investment, and research in the United States, to eliminate the Diversity Immigrant Program and for other purposes.
Question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? Members will record their vote by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
This bill would create a new STEM visa program under which foreign students who earned advanced degrees in computer sciences, engineering, and math at U.S. colleges and universities could remain in the U.S. to work in those fields. To provide for those 55,000 visas, the measure eliminates the existing diversity visa program and reallocates the visas to that new STEM program. Yesterday, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, Congressional Black Caucus, and Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus joined in a Dear Colleague letter urging House members to oppose that high-tech visa bill. Congressional Quarterly writes that the letter says that while they support the idea of granting more permanent visas to foreign tech workers, they oppose doing that at the expense of other, less educated groups of immigrants. This STEM visa bill needs a 2/3 majority to pass.
257, the nays are 158, two-thirds not being in the affirmative. The rules are not suspended, and the bill is not passed. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Hastings, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 5987 as amended, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 5987, a bill to establish the Manhattan Project National Historical Park in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Los Alamos, New Mexico, and Hanford, Washington, and for other purposes.
Question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
The last vote of the day on a bill that establishes a Manhattan Project National Historical Park and specifies the areas that may be included: Los Alamos, New Mexico, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and Hanford, Washington. Russell Berman, a reporter for The Hill, sent a tweet a couple minutes ago saying Republican Vice Presidential candidate Paul Ryan, who's here for the House votes, is now on the House floor sitting in conversation with Democratic Whip Steny Hoyer. After this series of votes, there'll be debate on a package of 5 energy and environment bills aimed at boosting energy production and job creation. And some of our live coverage this evening, a Senate Subcommittee on Investigations is holding a hearing on multinational corporations shifting profits into offshore subsidiaries to avoid paying U.S. taxes. That's live right now on C-SPAN 3. And we'll also have the Massachusetts Senate debate live. Senators Scott Brown and Elizabeth Warren at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. That's being held in Massachusetts, in Boston, on C-SPAN 3, C-SPAN Radio, and cspan.org.
are 237, the nays are 180, two-thirds not being in the affirmative. The rules are not suspended, and the bill is not passed.